How we doing, Jets fans? I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation.com. Be sure to log on to JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. Special episode of JetNation.com radio today. Myself, I'm Chris Schubert of the Draft Network. Chris is going to join us, a diehard Jets fan. If you're not listening to the Draft Network and tuning in using the website, you should be. I'm a regular. Chris now is doing a daily show on the Draft Network, and he's going to cover with me. We're going to go over some of these big stories that are involved the Jets right now, and we're also going to talk about some draft prospects that Chris likes with the draft fast approaching. So, Chris, one story that is sort of a mini story developing. We'll get to the Elijah Moore trade in a second, but it seems that since the trade, Michael Carter, Jets running back Michael Carter, has taken all New York Jets references down off of his social media. He is blocking any Jets fans who either praise Ezekiel Elliott or who criticize Elijah Moore. He's on his Twitters, telling people, you don't know what's going on and it's none of your business and leave me alone. He seems agitated, which is surprising. I'm a big Michael Carter guy, especially from the character side. I think he's in a bad place right now because one of his closest teammates got dealt. But with him taking the references down to the Jets and telling people to leave him alone, have you seen any of this and what are your thoughts?
I hadn't seen any of it, and we talked about it in the kind of the pre-show when you and I hopped on here right before we started. Listen, we live in a new age with social media, right? I'm a product of it. It's part of my childhood, a part of my growing up and my upbringing. So I get it. I understand. I don't read too much into references being brought down from Twitter handles. Sometimes it means a player's not going to be there anymore. Sometimes players just do it when they're upset, and then it goes back up 5 minutes later. Trying to figure out what a player means by that kind of stuff is a part of my brain that I'm not interested in using. Listen, I love Michael Carter. I think Michael Carter is going to need to be a big part of this team because I think expectations for Breece Hall in 2023 are probably a little bit higher than where I'm comfortable with right now, considering the injury he's coming off of. And so I think Michael Carter is a big part of it. I could understand the fact that the year he comes into the league and comes into the New York Jets, guess who also came to the New York Jets during that time? Elijah Moore was a second-round pick that year. You don't think those two guys bonded as being rookies, a part of the same class in training camp in the NFL for the first time ever? You don't think those guys are close? You don't think those guys understand each other? You don't think it sucks to see a friend, a teammate, somebody you came into this league with be gone? So I can completely understand it. Again, I don't read too much into stuff here in the middle of March. There are a lot of bigger things to worry about right now when it comes to the New York Jets.
Yeah, I think for me the thing that jumped out is for him it's so out of character. But again, he's frustrated. One of his closest friends just got dealt, and a lot of people are celebrating it. Not just that he got traded, but you got fans on your Twitter saying, "Well, he did what he did," and let's talk about what he did. It's a hot topic right now with Jets fans because of course the Elijah Moore trade happened. A lot of folks didn't see it coming, and as I've said, as many others have said, there was the way that the situation played out last year when he demanded a trade. Were you surprised by the deal, or did you kind of think this was a possibility?
Oh, surprise is an interesting word. I was surprised at the timing. I was surprised that where Elijah ended up. I have always been of the belief that if Elijah was going to get moved from the New York Jets, it was going to be a part of an eventual Aaron Rodgers trade, just because you would think the Green Bay Packers would want to set up Jordan Love for the most kind of success that they can. They've already got Christian Watson, but other than that, Allen Lazard's gone. He's now in New York. So I always thought that could make some sense. So to see the Jets move Elijah in a different capacity to a different team was a bit surprising, at least the timing of it. But ultimately, no. I mean, look, Garrett Wilson absolutely emerged as the wide receiver one of this team. Elijah didn't really have a great second season. They just spent money on Allen Lazard. They brought in Mecole Hardman near hours before they get this trade done. There's the floating rumors of Odell Beckham Jr. And at least as we sit here and do this show, Glenn, Corey Davis is still on the roster. Thought for sure he would be cut to save the $10 million by now, but he's still on the roster right now. So you could very quickly kind of look around and say, I don't really know how much Elijah is going to get of this workload. So the Jets, I think, did well here. I know they had to attach a third-round pick, but now they got 2 picks in the second round. And I'll say it to you. I said it to you in the pre-show, and I've said it on my podcast. I do not think this has anything to do with the Aaron Rodgers move. I don't think the Jets made a trade to get another second-round pick so then they can trade that second-round pick to Green Bay. I just don't buy any of that. I think the New York Jets did this trade because it was the best offer at the time for Elijah Moore and because I think Odell Beckham Jr. is coming. That's why they made the move from a timing perspective.
Yeah, I was guilty of that. We talked about that pre-show as well, and I mentioned it last night on our show with myself and Dylan Terman. The minute the trade was made, that was my first thought. I was like, okay, that's the deal going to the Packers. Slept on it that night, and I was like, you know what? I'm not so sure it is. Like I've been saying all along, the Rodgers package should be a 3 this year and a conditional next year. And I feel like that might even be a little bit generous. I mean, listen, it's depending on who you talk to. Some experts say the Packers hold all the cards here. Others say the Jets hold all the cards. I think the Jets, while there are options that are far less desirable than Aaron Rodgers, they could pivot and say, listen, is Matthew Stafford medically cleared? Even if it's a bluff, even if they just put out a float, a rumor that they're looking at other quarterbacks, the Packers don't have that. The Packers can't say, well, then we'll just trade Aaron to team B. There is no team B. So in that sense, the Jets hold enough of the cards that I could see the Jets saying, you know what, we're going to offer you a 4 and a 4. We're not going to give you a 2 because I don't see a 1 or a 2 happening. And if it does, as I've said, I think that's being driven by ownership because I don't think Joe Douglas is a guy who's going to give up that type of draft capital for a 1-year rental.
We've seen it. We've seen the way Joe Douglas operates, not just in making trades, but in free agency and in everything that he does. There is you want to call it arbitrary? I think that's the right word to use here. There's an arbitrary value that the Jets front office, Joe Douglas and his entire team, put on a player in terms of what we want to offer him in terms of free agency, what we want to give up in a trade, where we think the value is for a certain player, and they won't exceed that value. I'll give you a perfect example. Marcus Williams a couple off seasons ago was a marquee guy that a lot of people thought the Jets were going to get. Well, we saw the contract that he signed with Baltimore, and then you had a bunch of Jets reporters come out of the woodwork and say the Jets were never going to get there. The Jets had a number on Marcus. Baltimore got to a better number. That's the way it works. And so Joe is very, very consistent in his approach. So to me, if this is completely Joe Douglas and it's an autonomy decision from the general manager in the front office, there's a value that they have internally. It's written on a whiteboard somewhere. This is what we are willing to give up for Aaron Rodgers, and we are not going past this. Now, to your point, if Woody steps in and wants to do something a little differently, then that changes things. But if this is completely Joe Douglas, no, I don't see them giving up a first-round pick. No, I don't see them giving up, a 1 and a 2. I just don't see that happening. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think this gets done for probably a 3 or a 4. If I had to put a percentage on it, because I'm with you, I think the Jets hold more of the cards, and I do think the leverage is in their hand. I would put it 60-40 leverage for the Jets, and I think that grows by the day because the closer and closer we get to the NFL draft, the more pressure there is on the Green Bay Packers. Because if they want to pick in the 2023 NFL draft, then they're the ones on the timetable. They're the ones that have a decision to make. Because for the New York Jets, if you're Joe Douglas, all I need is Aaron Rodgers wearing a Jets jersey in September. I don't care if he's on my team right now. He could join my team in July for all I care. But he's on my team. He's ready to go. For the Packers, if they want 13, if they want a second-round pick, well, guess what? The clock is ticking if they want to get this done. And again, at the end of the day, they're the ones that will have to accept the option and pay $60 million in cash if this doesn't get done. So that's why I know the pressure on the Jets. I know Aaron Rodgers said his intentions are to play to New York, and I know they need a quarterback. But to me, there was more pressure on the team that has the financial implications the longer this goes out, and that's the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I mean, when you publicly announce you don't want the guy, and you're going to owe him $60 million to sit on your bench if he stays, what blows me away is the number of people who are like, oh, the Packers are in the driver's seat here. They can command 2 1s. It's like, what are you talking about? They're not in the driver's seat. They don't have the leverage that some people are saying, but I'm ready for this to be over. I think we can all agree with that. 100%. I mean, I was ready for this to be over by day 3. But just some draft talk real quick. With the Draft Network, one of the things I enjoy is your coverage of the mid-major guys. Because I tell Dylan Terraman, when I'm looking at prospects, I look at whatever, I go to a couple different sites and I find the list of prospects and I start near the bottom. I want the small schools, the names I don't want to hear the guys that I'm going to hear people talk about for the next, 6 months. They're going to talk about them every 10 minutes. I want to look at the lower rated, the UDFAs and work my way up. That's why I love the mid-major stuff. So give us a couple of names of guys that you think who you think you'd like to see wearing green and white.
It is my brand. If you go to my Twitter account at Chris Schubert _ it is in my Twitter #midmajor Chris. It is my brand. I champion the mid majors in the TD and Premium Discord with all of our premium members on different podcasts. So I'm with you, Glenn. Love these mid majors. You got to give them some love. I'll give you 2 players, right? And these are 2 players that I got a chance to see down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Don't know how interested and how the value will line up for the New York Jets. But Cody Mock, interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State, is a guy that I think is not going to be a round 1 guy. So we're looking at a team like the New York Jets that's got 2 second-round picks, certainly a player that could be there for them on day 2 in the second round. But a guy that played a little bit of center at the Senior Bowl, a bit of an interior player. Has just got that kind of that meanness about him where just when he's out there and he's taking those reps, you could tell he wants to go. He wants to have that competition. And he showed that flexibility playing at center at times during the week. So that would be one for me. And then the other one, a linebacker. And listen, I know I'm gonna see the tweets, but Chris, He's not that big. He's not that tall. I understand, but this guy plays at 135% every
I
chance
already
he
know
gets.
who you're
That's
going to say.
Cincinnati linebacker Ivan Pace Jr.
Yes.
This guy can play. This guy is physical. He's tough. He plays bigger than he is, and I am not worried about the size concerns. He's fast. He played well in coverage down there at the Senior Bowl. I was very impressed being able to watch him, and it was every day that he popped for me while we were watching him down there. And so again, I understand the size concerns. I get it. He's not built like your prototypical linebacker, but I think for the New York Jets that have a thumper in C.J. Mosley, who's going to be able to lay the boom and get hits. You brought back Quincy Williams. I think having a different kind of player at that position would be helpful. So Ivan Pace Jr. is a guy that I would really like.
Yeah, there's a lot of linebackers in this class that I love. I talked about Ivan Pace. We did a show a couple weeks ago, sort of our guys, at each position, that guys who we sort of would pound the table for. Ivan Pace is one of my guys. And the thing, you saw it in Mobile, and that's what, that was the one concern, was the size. He was able to stack and shed and get much bigger dudes off of him and get to the ball carrier. And I was like, concerns alleviated. That was it. Like, that was my only question. Saw him watch them early in the year, I believe, against Arkansas. Watched him a little bit last year, wrote his name down. I was like, here's a guy to keep an eye on. Looked really good when I watched him early in the year. Looked really good at the Senior Bowl. He's one of many linebackers I'd be happy with. Love Jack Campbell. Love Dan Henley.
Oh, Deion Henley. That he's not a mid-major guy, but if you want to talk about a Jet linebacker, it's Deion Henley. Like, he just fits everything they want to do. I love Henry To'oTo'o. I think his football IQ is unbelievable. That's another guy. But yeah, for a team that I think needs a linebacker, and it needs to be one of the areas that they address in the draft, there's like 5 or 6 guys that I really like that I would be happy with if they ended up in a Jets uniform.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where Henley goes, because we do our weekly with Jet Nation Radio. Every week we pick a couple of guys to watch for the year, and he was my guy week 1. One of my defensive guys was Dan Henley, and he didn't disappoint, man. He had a monster season. But that'll wrap things up here. We'll keep it short this week. We covered all the main topics. We wanted to get a couple of prospect names out there, but we're going to try to make this as regular a thing as possible, and we'll be on next week to cover some more stuff, some more Jets topics. Hopefully, we'll be talking about the actual compensation for the actual Aaron Rodgers trade and not more hypothetical, but my gut tells me they're going to drag this on a little longer. But Chris, go ahead and plug your show, plug your site. And I know you've been doing the daily show that I've been checking out on the pod. Well worth a listen.
I appreciate it. So the TDN Daily podcast, they do every day, quick 15, 20 minutes at most. I just cover the major storylines in both the college football world, the NFL world, the draft world on a daily basis. So it's a lot of fun. TheDraftNetwork.com. We've got all the scouting reports on all the players, mock draft machine right around the corner for everybody. So I got a lot of fun stuff over there. So if you want to read stories, read scouting reports on all these players to figure out who you want the Jets to take here in a couple of weeks, TheDraftNetwork.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Schubert _.
All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks for tuning in, Jets fans.